When you look up at the moon, it usually feels so silent, right? Completely separated from all the chaos down here on Earth. Well, that quiet separation, it's about to be shattered in a way literally no one alive has ever seen. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the pretty awe-inspiring reality of a derelict rocket that is currently, as we speak, hurtling through space, destined to slam right into the moon. We're going to break down exactly what this collision tells us about humanity's connection to the night sky and how an entirely accidental event has turned into this massive global science experiment. So let's just jump right in.
Let's start with just the sheer wonder of this exact moment. Because for the very first time in human history, we know the exact half-second an object the size of a 5-story building is going to hit the lunar surface. August 5th at exactly 34 minutes and 32.9 seconds past 6 in the morning, universal time. I mean, just sit with that for a second. We aren't guessing here. We're not giving a rough, sometime next week estimate. We have a rock-solid, time-stamped appointment with another world. And what's wild is the absolute absurdity of this precision. Think about how we predict stuff here on Earth, right? Weather forecasters can't even tell you within half a day exactly when a hurricane is going to make landfall. Earthquake scientists, they can't give you a date at all. Yet, for this lunar impact, astronomers actually published a timestamp accurate to the 10th of a second, a full 11 months in advance. Humanity has essentially been watching this play out for almost a year, double-checking the math, and the appointment has held perfectly.
Part 1. An unstoppable lunar appointment.
So since we know exactly when it happens, let's look at what this unstoppable object actually is. The whole journey kicked off back in January of 2025. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched, carrying 2 commercial moon landers. And it did its job perfectly. One of those landers even became the first fully successful commercial lunar landing ever, which is huge. But here's the catch. Once the hollow second stage of that rocket released its payloads, it didn't have anywhere else to go. It was just left in this enormous, lopsided, totally unmanaged orbit. For 18 months, this dead piece of hardware and the moon basically kept missing each other, swinging past one another over and over again in this high-stakes cosmic waltz.
2. The unlikely lone discoverer.
Now, this is where the story gets really beautifully human. You'd probably assume a major collision like this was being tracked by some global superpower, right? But it wasn't NASA, it wasn't the Space Force, it was literally one contract astronomer named Bill Gray. See, the reality is that our global military radars, the ones that can track a dropped astronaut glove in low Earth orbit, they are completely blind at lunar distances. It's just the laws of physics. Radar signals bounce back way too faintly. So the discovery of this impending crash, it was made by one guy, running orbit software on his own, chewing through telescope data that was collected almost completely by accident.
And honestly, this just brilliantly illustrates the power of community. Because it took a scattered, deeply passionate patchwork of stargazers to actually lock in this prediction. Asteroid hunters who were out looking for dangerous space rocks accidentally caught this slow-moving point of light. Then, amateur astronomers and observatories from Mississippi all the way to Utah, Beijing, and England just rallied together. They managed to gather exactly 1,053 individual observations to perfectly map the rocket's final unstoppable trajectory.
But here is perhaps the most poetic realization of this entire explainer, the thing that finally locked this dead rocket stage onto a collision course with the moon. It wasn't just gravity, and it definitely wasn't an engine burn. It was solar radiation pressure, meaning it was the faint, physical, constant push of sunlight itself. Actual light gently steered this dead machine through the vacuum of space, slowly shifting its trajectory over months and pointing it directly toward a world it was never meant to touch.
Section 3. The science of the crash.
Okay, so let's get into the awe-inspiring physics of what actually goes down at 34 minutes past 6 in the morning. When this completely empty aluminum shell hits the moon near the Einstein Crater, it is not going to be a gentle tap. It's striking at roughly 5,400 miles per hour, so around Mach 7. The stage is going to hit with 14.5 billion joules of kinetic energy. To put that completely massive number into perspective, it's roughly equivalent to 3 tons of TNT, or about 15,000 sticks of dynamite, all detonating at a single point on the lunar surface in a fraction of a second.
So the really crucial question for scientists is, what does an explosion like that leave behind? We're expecting a brand new crater somewhere between 17 and 30 meters across. Now, natural meteoroids, like one that hit in 2024, can leave way larger craters because they're made of solid rock and move much faster. But because we know this rocket's exact mass, its speed, and its angle of arrival, this predictable impact acts as a massive, completely free ground truth experiment.
It's actually going to help scientists precisely calibrate the crater scaling laws that we rely on for planetary defense against dangerous asteroids.
Now, as for what we'll actually see, the impact flash itself will unfortunately be totally washed out by the sunlit lunar surface. But the resulting cloud, oh, that is the real prize. Models are predicting that this impact will excavate roughly 800,000 pounds of moon dust, blasting it outward into this spectacular curtain that could climb 15 to 20 kilometers right above the moon's edge. And since there's no atmosphere to slow it down, it'll just rise directly into the blackness of space.
Part 4. A lingering lunar mystery. To really understand the stakes of this new crater we're about to create, we actually have to look back to March of 2022. Another piece of hardware, which observers identified as a Chinese rocket stage, hit the moon. And yep, Bill Gray tracked that one too. But it struck the dark side of the moon, so it was completely hidden from Earth. When NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter finally managed to photograph the impact site months later, they found something deeply bizarre, an overlapping double crater. And to this day, there's absolutely no public document or manifest that can account for why that stage was heavy at both ends. It makes no sense.
Which perfectly sets up the upcoming verdict. The SpaceX rocket hitting next week, it only has one heavy engine bolted to one end. Physics strictly dictates it should cleanly leave a single crater. But if NASA's orbiter photographs this new site and somehow finds another double crater, well, the mystery of 2022 blows wide open again, and it's really going to force us to question what we actually know about these drifting objects.
Section 5. A free warning shot.
Look, scientifically speaking, the moon is going to be perfectly fine. It takes much bigger hits naturally all the time. But this entire event exposes a genuinely uncomfortable truth that we have to face. Between low Earth orbit, where we painstakingly track every single tiny piece of debris, and the moon, there is this vast empty volume of space where our surveillance is basically blind. Ownership is totally undefined, and cleanup is simply nobody's job. We are a civilization that's actively planning to inhabit the moon, yet we have no agency, no treaty, and no office assigned to manage dead rockets in this rapidly multiplying traffic zone.
And what makes this so incredibly frustrating is that the solution already exists. It's called heliocentric disposal. It basically means using a rocket's very last breath of fuel to throw the spent stage permanently into an orbit around the sun, far, far away from Earth and the moon. It costs almost nothing to do, but because it isn't required by law, it just isn't routine, which makes this incoming, completely unstoppable crash the gentlest possible warning shot for humanity.
Part 6. How to watch the impact.
Before we wrap this up, let's talk about how you can actually watch this historic event for yourself. But first, let's quickly put to bed all the noise online. There are wild conspiracies out there claiming this object is being deliberately aimed at the moon, or that its true identity is being covered up. The tracking data dismantles that in seconds. This rocket has had zero power or propellant for 18 months. You simply cannot steer without an engine. Its trajectory drifted purely via the gentle push of sunlight. The physics of its drift is honestly a bit boring, but the truth that the cosmos just naturally steered our discarded junk into a perfect, accidental collision is so much stranger and more fascinating than any conspiracy theory.
So if you want to see it happen, here is your quick guide. The viewing geometry heavily favors the Americas. You'll want to look up around midnight to 1 a.m. Eastern Time on August 5th. And you don't need some massive observatory. A standard backyard telescope will actually do the trick. Just frame your shot just off the moon's bright edge, and make sure to kill the camera glare. You'll want to record at 20 frames per second or faster. Oh, and if you want to try a literally historic science experiment, try using a lithium filter tuned to 670.8 nanometers. The rocket's tanks are made of an aluminum-lithium alloy, and catching that faint chemical glow in the resulting dust plume would be an absolute first in history.
Ultimately, whether that dust rises high enough for backyard telescopes to catch it, or the moon just swallows the whole moment in total silence, this accidental appointment proves something pretty profound. It proves we actually have the human passion and the math to track the heavens down to the half-second. But as we watch this piece of human history violently return to dust, it leaves us with one very provocative question. As our cosmic traffic keeps multiplying, what else are we missing out there in the dark?